Hey guys, Sam here again. So we're continuing on our series reviewing all the movies in my personal Criterion collection. And today we're going to look at one of Martin Scorsese's most controversial films, which is saying a lot considering his very controversial career. But that would be the 1988 film and number 70 in the Criterion collection, The Last Temptation of Christ. Just even looking at the title, looking at the cover, you can probably see where the controversy came from. Most films dealing with religious topics and trying to tell the story of Jesus are always followed by controversy. But this one especially had a very loud and vocal pushback for very odd reasons, which we will get into later on in the review. But this is a special Criterion for me in the sense that I didn't get it in a big sale. It wasn't a gift to me. It was soon after I really got into the collection. And I went to a Barnes & Noble randomly, and they had it on sale for like 20-30% off. And, well, I heard how great it was and how much people loved it. And, it's a Scorsese film, and I was starting to get into it more, so I thought I may as well check it out and rent it or buy it. And I remember really impacting me. It was a film I don't know if I quite understood at the time of watching it. But looking at the special features, reading the essay, just getting more involved in the film and its production made me really appreciate it. So to go over the plot of Last Temptation of Christ, it is the story of Jesus Christ, specifically from his adulthood when he starts actually gaining his disciples, leading all the way up to when he is betrayed by Judas and crucified. So this version of Jesus' story is based off a book written by Nikos Kazantzakis. I know I said his name wrong. Which takes this fictional look at Jesus' life and tries to portray him as more human, focusing more on his earthly desires and earthly doubts. Essentially framing Jesus as someone who was not always confident in his status, as someone who did wrestle not only with his own faith, but in being the Son of God and how he dealt with that. And Paul Schrader, the famous writer who's worked with Scorsese many times, was just so impressed that he wrote the script. And Scorsese spent a long time trying to get this movie made, and finally in the late 80s, he finally was able to get it done. And so Jesus is played wonderfully by William Dafoe. And you have this all-star cast, including like Harvey Keitel, David Bowie is in there as well. Like, it's just this amazing cast. But I don't know if it's best to start off with a criticism. But there is definitely an issue with the film where most of the main cast and important players in the story of Jesus, at least in this film, are played by white actors. We can't get past that. That's really, sad to see. And while everybody gives an amazing performance, and I think William Dafoe absolutely kills it in this movie, it is difficult to ignore the fact that this film, along with weaker films dealing with the story of Jesus, tend to whitewash him when, of course, it would be near impossible for him to be a white person or to be a Caucasian person. That is unfortunate, and it's, I don't think it's, if for whatever reason that bothers you and you can't watch the film because of that, completely understand. And I hope someday we can get a better, or a version of this film and of this story played by someone who is actually a person of color. Someone who's actually Middle Eastern or from that area of the world. I mean, that'd be fantastic. But to focus on this film specifically, I think The Last Temptation of Christ is one of the most honest, one of the most honest and faithful and just oddly universal tellings of the story of Jesus, which is funny because the film itself is very almost psychedelic and metaphorical and like bizarre. It does a lot of visual tricks and flares to sort of convey what is going on. It's very experimental in a lot of weird ways, making for some amazing and just iconic imagery at points. There's an amazing sequence in which Jesus goes out to the desert for 40 days and 40 nights, which I think it's actually coming up soon. But he goes into the desert for 40 days and 40 nights, and he makes this circle, and he's visited by a snake and a lion and this pillar of fire, and it's all just like it's fairly simple effects, but they are so effective. It's amazing just how visually stimulated this movie is, and how it tries to get you in the same mindset of Jesus. And I think that's one of my favorite elements of the film, is how it tries to make Jesus relatable. I personally am not a person of faith. I grew up in a Christian household. I grew up in a small, very conservative, very Christian town. So I've been around people like this, and I've tried to have these sort of faith-based and these hard discussions with people, but their faith is so strong, or they're just so oblivious they don't want to even question this. But I think what I really appreciate about this film is it understands that this isn't really how it's described in the Bible, but this is a very comforting way to look at questioning your faith and questioning your life, because Jesus is someone who believes he has sinned, right? Like in the beginning of the film, he is a carpenter, and so he makes crucifixes for Rome, and he is very much, the people in his hometown, they are just so angry with him and throw stones at him. He is being punished, and so he really doesn't believe he's worthy of this status, right? And he has to take so many different journeys and find so many different avenues and take the wrong path sometimes. He makes plenty of mistakes in this film. There's a point in which he believes that violence is the answer, that he believes that like the best way to defeat Rome is with violence and with anger. And it's him going through the process of interpreting these visions from God, and how he tries to convey them to everybody else, and also details the struggle of trying to convince so many people about the word of God, which he believes is right, and so many people call him crazy or believe he's wrong. And I think that's one of the more special aspects of the film, is how it tries to ground this reality, because I think a lot of people, especially a lot of people, miss when reading the Bible and when telling the story of Jesus, is how difficult it was and how unlikely Jesus is. And that's what makes him so engaging, is like he is sort of an everyman, right? He is this person that was poor, that lived with prostitutes and criminals and thieves, and was able to convert them, to show them the power of love and care and treating everybody with respect. And he was able to perform these miracles, but he wasn't performing the miracles for the rich and the powerful. He was standing up against them. But those ideas, even today, right, but especially back then, they're radical. To totally deny, the Jewish faith, to totally deny the Roman rule, and say, this is the way, I am the Son of God, to make people believe that. It's insane. And he knows it's insane. He believes it's insane, and he's spending this whole movie trying to figure out if that's right. He understands the repercussions of what he's saying, and it's just endlessly engaging and fascinating to watch this story play out in such a human and realistic way. So we go through the story of Jesus Christ, all the way leading up to his crucifixion, which leads to probably the most infamous sequence in the film. Where Jesus is on the cross, and he looks down, and there's a child, this young girl. She walks through the crowd and just says, "Hey, turns out, like, I'm your guardian angel. Turns out, God, you're not the Son of God. You've done your service. Essentially, you've received enough punishment, and God has said you're free to go. So you can get down, go live your life. You're free. Do what you want. Be a normal person in a sense." And so the most controversial moment of the film is when he goes and immediately marries Mary Magdalene, and they have sex, have a child, but then Mary Magdalene dies. And so Jesus goes on to live with these two women, I forget who they are in the Bible, but live with them, and just lives out his life, completely ignoring his mission, completely ignoring his calling, because he believes so, until at the end of the world, essentially, where Rome is, in an almost apocalyptic way, is sort of destroying the world. His disciples come to him and say, "Hey, you messed up. Like, we needed you. We believed in you, and you let us down." But then it's revealed that this guardian angel was in fact Satan in disguise, and was sort of playing this trick, or was trying to pull Jesus from the path, and is trying to deter Jesus from following the word of God, and taking his rightful place as the Son of God, to which Jesus sort of crawls out onto the open and begs for forgiveness, and he is forgiven, wakes back up on the cross, says it's complete, or it's accomplished, and he dies. That's the end of the film. I kind of spoiled it, but I think that's important. That's one of the most important aspects to talk about when discussing this film, because I think that sequence does a fantastic job of showing how powerful God's forgiveness is, and expressing like the power of this religion, and how you can have, even Jesus wasn't perfect, and he could make that big mistake. He could have these dreams and these desires that go beyond religion, but, everyone makes mistakes. Everyone messes up. And if they eventually come back and ask for forgiveness, they are forgiven. And I think just the way this movie expresses that, through the performances, through the amazing cinematography and filmmaking, just everything about it is so grand scale and yet made on a fairly small budget. It's just simply amazing. I adore this movie. I think it's one of Scorsese's best movies. I think it's one of his most underrated movies, and it always makes me think every time I see it. I don't know if I necessarily question my faith, but I understand it more, and I really respect Scorsese for taking this risk, for being willing to talk about faith in such an open way, and trying to make Jesus more human and more relatable. And I just think that's such a powerful thing, and really shows his dedication to his faith in God, and to just this understanding of how difficult it is to be faithful, but how important it is to remain so, but not to ignore the issues of faith, not to ignore the doubts and the concerns, the emotional toll, because even Jesus had his moments in this context. Even Jesus had a hard time choosing between his spiritual duties and his human desires, but that's just a part of it. That's what life is, and that's what we must go through, and we must be faithful in that God can forgive us. Again, not religious. I don't know if I fully believe in that, or believe there is a higher power, but I think it's a powerful statement, and I really wish more fundamentalist Christians would be more on board for this. Which, to get to the release itself, the booklet that comes with it, which is kind of light, but it does open up like this to reveal this image, which I think is super cool. Has an essay from David Ernstein, which goes into the context of the film, the production of it, and then the very end really talks about the controversy and how kind of stupid it was, because everybody who was mad about the film had not seen the film. All these fundamentalist, far-right Christian groups hadn't even seen the film. They just heard about it and knew about the book, and were just immediately trying to discredit it. And I think it shows the inherent prejudice and, just the lack of understanding of the religion they claim to preach, when they would chastise and cast out this film, but then show Passion of the Christ to third graders, a truly horrible, despicable, anti-Semitic film. It's just, it blows my mind. But also the special features here are interesting. You have an interview with Peter Gabriel, who did the soundtrack, which is really great. Very bombastic, very, very, very interesting at times. You also get special features talking about the location shoots, and galleries and stills from the production and costume design, if you want to get more into that side of it. And of course, a commentary with Scorsese, Paul Schrader, and William Dafoe. Jay Cox, another writer on it. I think I've watched a bit of it, and it's very fascinating to hear them discuss this film, especially William Dafoe discussing, having to play Jesus and how daunting that is. But I highly, highly recommend this movie. Not even just as a Criterion, just for the special features, but I recommend as one to own and watch and study and analyze. And I just think it's a fantastic and amazing film. It's very impactful, and I really, really recommend it just to own, just to be able to watch. It's a fantastic movie. So that's today's review. Come back next time. We'll be talking about the French almost new wave heist movie Rafifi. But if you like this review, please like, comment, and share. And also subscribe to the channel if you want to see more stuff like this. But either way, hope you all have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.